The COVID-19 pandemic underlies the fact that we are all in this together. Our interconnected, globalized economies and societies are highly vulnerable to sudden shocks. The COVID-19 outbreak and its horrendous scale of impact was an unforeseeable black swan event. Right now, the imperative is to fast-track packages and policies that help to fight the health crisis, protect the vulnerable, and pave the way to restarting our economies once the pandemic is past its peak. That's also going to be the moment for governments, scientists, and the public to pause, take stock of lessons learned, and introduce plans to make societies more resilient and better able to cope with possible future pandemics. But we risk ignoring a far greater challenge to civilization, namely climate change. And that is decidedly not a black swan issue, given that the scientific early warning bells have been ringing increasingly loudly for years. As with any emergency, time is of the essence. Without speedy intervention now, climate change could harm the lives and livelihoods of billions of people, put countless communities at grave risk, threaten the very existence of coastal cities and small island states, and trigger damage affecting generations to come. Global warming and environmental change generally is also set to increase the risk of old diseases re-emerging and current illnesses like malaria that spread geographically. New health threats could emerge too. The Nipah virus outbreak in Malaysia in the late 1990s is a good case in point. Fortunately, we already know what we need to do to address climate change and create a better, more sustainable world. If we act on that knowledge, our societies would be economically productive as they are today, but with new kinds of green jobs, cleaner air, healthier oceans, less polluted communities, and perhaps greater social justice. Tackling climate change and other global and national threats requires an approach that rejects the divisive narrowness of me, my interests, and my country first, in favor of a larger us, united by our shared interest and common cause, survival. More concretely, scientists argue that we should limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius in order to avoid more frequent and harmful extreme weather events, and protect natural systems like coral reefs and tropical forests like the Amazon. Thanks to the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, the world does have a roadmap for achieving a low-carbon future. Almost every country has a national plan under which rich countries need to provide support to poorer ones, and governments ratchet up their climate efforts over time. The ambitious goal is to achieve by 2050 a net zero world where we can look in the eye and say, we did it. The COVID-19 pandemic underlies the fact that we're all in this together. No country is immune from major global threats, and the same solidarity between countries and peoples is needed to address the even greater risk of climate change. We have a lot of reasons to be optimistic. Clean energy capacity like wind and solar is doubling every 5.5 years, if not faster, and electrification of transportation is underway. Meanwhile, thousands of cities under the umbrella of alliances like ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, and C40 Cities have adopted ambitious emission reduction targets. More than 800 global countries have submitted goals in line with climate science consensus, and over $30 trillion of investment have been pledged to support a low-carbon economy. But we're behind the curve in a range of sectors. For example, the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction estimates that the way we build and operate our homes and workplaces accounts for almost 40% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. Now, where scientists can often rapidly develop a vaccine against the disease, we will not cure the climate change problem if we only partly address it. The next few years are going to be critical, starting with the COP26 climate conference scheduled to take place in the United Kingdom in November, 5 years after the landmark Paris summit. It is vital that the vast majority of governments, supported by a critical mass of local authorities, businesses, and NGOs, step up their climate ambition at this year's gathering. As citizens, meanwhile, we should urge our governments to do the right thing by tackling global warming at speed and scale. And once the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic is over, we should come together in our workplaces, communities, and homes to support the realization of a healthier and climate-safe future. In that way, we can make 2020 a year to remember for good reasons, too.